Hi, it's Friday morning at 10:01, and I'm here to do some stuff today. Sorry, there's a thing on the screen here. There. Um, I'm going to be masking the canopy for the vertical takeoff Pogo VTO XF1, which is this thing that I can show you by, superior camera work here. That's how it stands. It's vertical takeoff, so it's got those tiny little caster wheels there and gigantic counter-rotating propellers up here that are driven by a jet engine, a turboprop. A very, very poorly rendered pilot and control panel that doesn't exist in this model. Sit there after climbing this ladder. They climb this ladder. That looks fun, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yep. Big, nice, safe thing to do. I guess it's good that he's wearing a helmet in case, because those are just metal rungs in case you slip. And then you stand on this little platform here. This little platform, you can see that's the scale. And then somehow get from this platform to there, including what the seat is. So you have to kind of like stand on this platform and I guess maybe put like 1 foot here, stand on the platform. I guess you put like 1 foot here and then swing over onto the seat, maybe stand up on the seat, I'm not sure, and then slide in. So that looks terrible. And getting out, somehow you have to slide your way out without falling off and then swing onto the platform. So I'm thinking that, I don't know, I I would love to see a video of somebody doing that. There might be one. There might be some historic grainy black and white tape of recording of somebody getting in and out of this thing. But it actually flew. You can see that. That's on. You can see a recording of that. This actually took off, transitioned into horizontal flight, and somehow was able to land again because the pilot facing up can't see, right? Just a mirror and people on the ground telling them, how close they are to the ground. So this thing actually flew a couple of times, but it never caught on because it's just a bad idea, really. Um, kind of, I don't know. It's kind of a fun thing to look at. There's actually a real one of these in the Museum of the Air Force. This is a Navy thing because it was made for landing on carriers, I guess. Um, there's one of these at the Museum of the Air Force, so it exists still. It's not. It's a non-flying version, but there it is. Um, so there's this canopy that on the box top, the people who make the professional grade models, they didn't paint this, but you can see that there's these lines on it. And those lines are the metal frame for the canopy, and those really should be painted this silvery aluminum metallic color. And so that's what I'm going to do. So before I can do that, I mean, I could try to hand paint those, but that would just be next to impossible. So I'm not even going to attempt that. But so I'm going to mask off the parts that are not going to be painted and then spray paint it. And now I've got this, which is kind of fragile and not really well balanced, sitting right here where I need to be doing work. And I guess I'll just set it up out of the way this way. Hopefully not break it. Oh yeah, there's rough edges on this. I need to do some fine sanding. Forgot about that. There's some places here where there's plastic that will keep it from fitting perfectly. No, I shouldn't even say that. Nothing on this model is fit perfectly. It will just keep it from fitting. I can say that. This side is easy. There's just a little bump here. I know the polishing of it mars the clear plastic, but there's, the part that's going to get painted. It's okay. This side, there's a messiness, just a lump here, and then flashing that sticks out here. That's really, really bad. I'm just going to keep using this 1000 grit. So it's going to take a while to do this, but I don't want to put scratches in the thing if I can possibly avoid it, which I am attempting to do. Making an effort here to avoid scratching the clear part. So most of this should be relatively easy to mask. There's a curve here. I can do that with really, really thin tape and then mask over that. This is the challenging part here, this curve here. So I'm going to, I don't know, try to cut a piece of tape out that will fit that. Right. I don't know why I added the out. People say that, cut things out, cut things up. Just cutting them. You don't have to add an adjective, really. But we do. My monologues have not been very good with this model. I've been talking about what I've been doing, as I've been building it, but I haven't talked about much of anything else. Probably going to be the same thing today, And over the years, it's years now that I've been doing this. Geez, really, it has been. It's been years that I've been doing this stream. And I talked a lot about what it was like in the 50s and 60s, with race cars and regular cars and space races and nuclear annihilation threats and, all the stuff that was happening back then. The demise of the television antenna industry and virtual elimination of the vacuum tube industry. I'm remembering the topics now. Oh yeah, television shows and the different genres and how they were all derivative. One station decided to have a spy show, so the other two had to come up with them. Some of them were pretty decent. Private eye shows, those were big for a while. There were two doctor shows. There were only two, at least that I know, that caught on. There might have been another one that nobody watched. Excess plastic. Using doing highly scientific feeling with my finger to see if I got it done or not. So what I'm explaining is that I really don't have that, I don't have things to talk about much anymore unless I start doing repeats. Always hated that growing up. We had 3.5 broadcast stations because it wasn't any cable, right? It was just whatever your antenna could pick up from the air. And, there was the acronyms, the ABC, NBC, CBS, those were them. That's what you got. And then we started out not having it, but then eventually PBS came. That was a later one. So for a long time, it was 3. That was it. That's all you got was 3 stations. And you just saw whatever they saw. And then, there was a season when the new shows came on. And then in the summer, it was just a repeat station. Repeats. And so back then we were young enough, we could remember what we saw. And so you see the same episode of whatever it was, I Dream of Jeannie or the Flintstones or something. You'd see the same episode like 2 more times during the summer because what else was there? Occasionally there was something even worse. I can talk about this. There was one vacation. My dad got 2 weeks of vacation a year. That was it. I guess that's still like that, but I think eventually he ended up getting 3. It was a big deal after he worked at a place for 25 years or so. But the 2 weeks of vacation, and he would save like 1 or 2 days maybe for Christmas or New Year's Day or, a day that he didn't get off. But mostly it was the first 2 weeks of August. It was always the first 2 weeks of August. And frequently those were rainy and stormy weeks. So one year he rented a cottage on a lake, kind of a house. It was actually pretty big because we went there with his brother and his brother's family. So there was, I don't know, like 4 bedrooms or something, maybe. I think some sisters, there were maybe 6 or 7 kids. There was just a lot of us there. I don't remember much about it other than that there was a living room with a television, a kitchen. There must have been bedrooms in the bathroom, because you have to go to a place to sleep and a place to go. Although I don't remember those much. What I remember about it, though, is that it rained. We got there, and it was just cold and wet for almost the entire time we were there. And that almost every night there was a thunderstorm. So we're on a lake, but we couldn't really go to it was a little lake, actually, kind of. When we were small, it seemed big, but it was actually really a pretty tiny lake. And it had a swimming beach, but we couldn't really go there. Not that we were prohibited from going, but it was just too cold and wet. It was very uncomfortable. And so we didn't. Like a week. He didn't rent it for a full 2 weeks, just for a week. So that was bad. So we were cramped up, in this place with like 7 kids of various ages. My mom and my brother's wife, spent most of their time in the kitchen complaining about being there with all the kids because my dad and brother would then go out fishing Yeah, in the rain, why not? Fish bite in the rain. The water doesn't bother them because they're in the water, right? They would go out in the thunderstorm too. That was always tense because they'd be out there on a lake in an aluminum boat with fishing rods at night in a thunderstorm. I think they did that several times. And so we all sat there hoping that they got back, and they did. That was a good thing. It's kind of an intense kind of thing. So, but what was worse? I mean, what was worse even than just being stuck in this relatively small space? We had a living room, and that was pretty much it. And we had some board games, and then board took on a whole nother meaning with those games because after a while, that was enough. But on television, because we had a television there, it was very bad because one of the conventions, either the Democratic or Republican convention, was on. I don't remember which. It doesn't matter which one it was. It was that's what was on. And back then, for some reason, all three stations decided that it was their civic duty to broadcast the convention live wherever, just absolutely everything about the convention. I'm not sure it was quite that bad, but it really felt that bad to us as we were all sitting there, not wanting to play the same board games over and over again. Okay, I'll explain what I'm doing here in just a minute, but I have to finish telling this story because I have to, fill the dead space somehow. Okay. So yeah, I mean, we're stuck in this single room with like 5 kids, not wanting to play the same boring board games anymore. And, there weren't any VCRs or tapes or much less CDs, no recorded stuff at all. And so all we got to do was listen and watch Eric Severide and Walter Cronkite or whoever talk about things that were not happening at this convention. It just felt like the entire week that's all there was. It was pretty miserable. On the day before we left, okay, so I'll just say the last day we were there, the last day really being the day we left, but the day before we left, it finally stopped raining. I remember the sun not coming out. Okay, it wasn't sunny, but it stopped raining. It stopped raining enough so we could actually go outside. We wandered down to the beach and didn't really, having just watched so much water come out of the sky, didn't even feel like going in the water. That was a wonderful vacation at that time. So, anyway, that was something to talk about. Okay, what I'm doing here, you can sort of see this, and I'm hoping this works, I don't know, is that I put a piece of tape over the entire thing here, not just the lines. Okay, but if you can kind of see it here, you can see it's a slightly lighter line here. Okay, it's possible to see in this case it's the inline, the lines. It's possible to see the lines of the canopy's metal structure. And what I'm going to try to do is use this very, very fine-tipped pen, okay, to run right along and slightly raise so I can push up against it. is to run right along the inside of that line and then cut it out right along the outside of this line. The important part is this curve up here. Okay, this stuff is just straight lines. I can get those later if that doesn't work, but I want that. So I'm actually just going to cut it from like here to here around and see if I can't get it to work. I plotted this technique while I was thinking about how I would pull this off. Yeah, and here I am trying to pull this off. Well, the tape is on there really well, isn't it? It folded around the bottom. That was handy. Cut carefully around the outside of the line. It'd be pretty nice if it worked. I'm going to leave that tab on the bottom for now. I can always cut that off, but I need a place to hold it, right? I have blobs there on everything. These scissors are kind of a family heirloom. Okay, they go all the way back. They belong to my mother. I don't know why she had them. Maybe a first aid kit, maybe for sewing. I'm not really sure, but they're really good for this. This is my other hand. And one can pretty much just not at all ambidextrous, so I'm pretty much right-handed only. Look at it through these. That's really, other than the placement of it, which is a little bit really not too bad. I wish my hands worked better. Action. Curled up like this, which is sort of a good thing and not at the same time. You know, I'm going to say that that's okay. Doesn't work down here. I'm going to have to take this off and cut it off here. It's a little too narrow. Okay, but this part up here, the curvy part, I think once it's painted, it will look okay. It's the right shaped curve and all. So there it is. What I'm going to be doing now, this is going to be like really boring, really kind of exceptionally boring. And I can't even apologize for it because these are, hopefully it's on maybe it's on the camera. I'm not sure. It's I need to get it along these lines and then get these sharp little corners. And then the same thing here. I mean, they're going to be harder to do than the thing I just did, at least in terms of getting the little corners right. So I knew this was going to, I kind of warned everybody on Wednesday that I'm trying to find the end of it. There it is. I think I warned everybody on Wednesday that I would be probably taking almost the entire stream today, just taping the canopy. Take like 3 minutes just to get the end of the tape started here. Seriously. Oh my. So I really need to come up with something to talk about. And we talk about Yogi Bear so much. About the guy I worked with once, engineering department at my dad's factory. It wasn't his. I mean, he didn't own the factory, but he worked at a factory as what was called a traffic manager, which is the person who decides what gets shipped on which trucks. That was a pretty good job. It didn't pay extremely well compared to some other jobs, but it had perks because the trucking companies that wanted the business, would like come up with little gifts, little like a turkey at Thanksgiving. You're just sitting there, and then the doorbell would ring, and then this turkey would show up, courtesy of some trucking line. What you're going to see in action here is that the tape sticks to the tweezers way better than it does to the thing to which I'm trying to apply it. Good. I need a little point there that's a little too far. Be careful not to cut off too much. Yeah, so one of the people that he used his pull because I'm trying to find a summer job after high school and was having trouble doing that. So he got a friend of his over in the industrial engineering department to make up a nice fake job for me. It actually turned out to be a real thing. It was a real project that they really wanted done that nobody in the office particularly wanted to do. And I did, so I did. But one of the people there thought he was Yogi Berra. And he really did. He just called me little buddy and some ways kind of annoying to have an adult with a professional degree acting like Yogi Bear, but that happened, you know. I'm gonna do a Yogi Bear imitation. Don't worry, it's not gonna happen. Why not? Yeah, this is one of those things where it looks fine from one direction and not the other. Kidding. Yeah. I mean, it's on this side, it looks really good, but on the other side, it looks like it's way away from the intended target. Enough away. I need to do it again. Another piece on. Yeah, this is why it's going to take a long time and it's going to be really boring. You can't really see what I'm doing. Do it from this side. Messing around here with like tenths of a millimeter. Nobody's going to be able to see this. But I know it's there, and I know that it's not where it should be. And there's this tiny little point that shouldn't be there. In some ways, this would be better if I weren't wearing these magnifying lenses, because then I wouldn't be seeing these little micro bits. The bottom. You might be saying, is this really necessary? And the answer to that is no. But I want the canopy to not look, I want it to look finished. And canopy was plexiglass with a metal frame, and the metal frame has to be painted a metallic color. And it just does. The clear part has to not be painted. Didn't work. It's not on there right at all. Yeah, I know this is taking forever. You can hardly see what I'm doing. I'm complaining about it constantly. That's how this stream works, really. It's me doing things that are really boring to watch and failing to adequately fill the time with an interesting monologue. And then this will probably just turn out to be a mess anyway, right? Yeah, it probably will. But you got to hear about my horrible vacation, ruined by some political party's convention. It was like ruined it even more than the rain ruined it, really. Because at least, well, it was summer too, so it was going to be rerun time anyway. But I'd rather have watched, previously viewed episodes of who knows what was on than the convention. It really was really pretty terrible. And I don't think it was on like 24/7, but it sure felt like it. It sure felt like there was nothing else. There's nothing else on the television. We get cable and streaming, and we can talk about, well, you got 195 different things to watch, and none of them are worth watching. Back then, we could only complain that we had 3 things to watch, and none of them were worth watching. Our source of irritation was more limited. But then as I mentioned, we eventually got PBS, so we had 4 things to watch. And then this will really date things. You probably can't even relate to this at all, because there was this huge innovation. We didn't even know that there were such things as VHF and UHF initially, because all of the stations were VHF, very high frequency, which was the acronym for the bandwidth that they were on. And then when I was, old enough to actually remember this, our city got a UHF station. The channels we had before were, when we had 3, 4, and 12. 13 was the very, very top of the VHS scale. Okay, it only went up to 13, whatever the 13 was, that's as high as it went. I need to take just a little stretch here and get some of the tape off of my fingers and scissors. Yeah, so those were our channels. And then PBS came along, Public Broadcast System. The Sesame Street one. I don't think we had Sesame Street then. I don't remember what used to be on it, to be honest. But I do remember that there was now this 4th station that sometimes had interesting things. That was 6. I remember these numbers. Those numbers, that was 6. So we had 3, 4, 6, and 12. And we could turn the dial. That's how you tuned things, how you got different stations as you turned the dial. It clicked. You could turn it to 8 or 7 or 11 or something, but all you'd get is staticky, fuzziness on the screen because there wasn't anything coming across on those. I shouldn't say that. There were, on occasions, just rare occasions, it was possible, to turn it to like 8 and pick up something from a distance away that, it might bounce off a cloud or something like that. And you could get a rogue station, and it was always fuzzy and the sound wasn't good, but it was, kind of an interesting thing to have happen. Like, oh yeah, there's something on 8 somewhere. And when you're a little kid, like 7 or 8 or something like that, that was an okay thing to do. But then ultra high frequency UHF came out. That was kind of a big deal because now all of a sudden there was yet another station. In this case, it was the fifth station. It was channel 18. That was it was a higher number. UHF started, at 14 because VHF stopped at 13. Of course, it would, that made sense, right? So yeah, I don't remember there being terribly much on that to begin with. But there it was. We now had UHF. The thing about UHF, though, is that it required a different antenna. The VHF antennas were just rods. They were metallic rods of different lengths to pick up the different frequencies. Different lengths on, or if you had rabbit ears, which was if you didn't have an antenna on your roof, you had an antenna on your TV, you'd adjust the direction and the length and stuff of your antenna. But the UHF antenna was a circle. So we had to get a new antenna in order to get channel 18. It was just a circle, and it was on a gimbal, so you had to do the same thing with it as you did with the rabbit ears. You had to like orient it, twist, bend it around, and rotate it, and things like that, and until it, until you got a signal that was not totally just static. But as kids, it was like, oh, we got this new thing called UHF, and it's got this new antenna thing. And we just played with it, right? It actually became kind of a toy. Play with the antenna to try to get channel 18. Even there wasn't really much to watch on channel 18. Well, that didn't go very well at all. I'm having really quite minimal success in getting these little bits of tape located well. End up scratching the canopy with the scissors or the tweezers, trying to get these bits of tape in place. I hope this is like insipidly boring. See, it's again one of those things where it looks good from this end and then it doesn't from this side. I need to learn to just rotate it the way it doesn't look good to begin with. Okay, I knew this was going to be tedious and take a long time. Okay, but I am, as I'm doing this, I am just really, I don't know what to say. It's just even more tedious and time consuming than I thought it would be, and I thought it was going to be horribly tedious. I don't even have the right adjective anymore to describe how much time this is going to take. And who knows if it's even worth doing. Well, I do have 3 hours, I guess, to pull this off. It's going to take the whole thing. What it's going to end up taking, as everything does, 2 to 3 times longer than I thought it would, and probably that much longer than it should. Just because, well, it takes even longer if I drop stuff on the floor. I don't even know what happened there. No, I do know what happened. Some tape from the scissors, because there's tape all over the scissors, got onto the tape. It's time to clean the tape off the scissors and the tweezers and the fingers. So those of you who know what you're doing when you're building models, like you're a good model maker, a skilled model maker, are probably looking at this and going, yeah, I mean, in general terms, he's doing it the right way. Little pieces of tape, getting them into the corners. In more specific terms, that is to say, could you be doing it faster? The answer to that is almost certainly, yeah, of course. But getting this done faster probably requires something I don't have, which is like really good eye-hand coordination and being younger. I think that's what I'm missing here most of all is being younger. Yeah, that one just went very badly. That was very poorly located. Okay, that was even funnier. I had the tape upside down. You might have noticed that I dropped it off the scissors and then I picked it up and picked it up upside down. This is where I could make a really, really stupid mistake. I got the edges like this, okay? Oh, that looks pretty good. And then I would forget to tape over the middle part and then spray paint it, and right in the middle of the panel there would be a big chunk of paint. That would be very really bad and really really discouraging. So I'm going to cover that like I should with a piece of bigger tape here. Look at that. Kind of lost track of how small these bits are. There. Well, this actually turned out to be like the easier thing instead of the hardest. So now I got to do this on this side. And then I've got this big chunk here, which is a big long, I mean, this is a big area, but, probably well, I don't know. I'm not going to make a prediction about how it's going to go. Eventually, this will get done. Like everything else I do on this stream, it's like this is going to take 2 to 3 times longer than I would think it would. Anyone would think it would reasonably take. And then, sometimes it has to be done over. I can't even cut things off. I'm not even going to tell you, the steps yet that are going to go. You just, at this point, you'd go, no, I'm not bothering with this. But just as a preview, if you think that after I get this panel and this done that I'd be finished, but you would be wrong, because I'm actually going to tape it on the inside as well. At some point in the future, I'll explain why. I'm going to hold that, as an item of suspense. Suspense. It was an old radio show. It was actually the title of it, Suspense, and they said it that way. I'm not saying that to be. ironic or sarcastic. That's how the announcer announced it. You know, what would be really good is if I had an X-Acto knife that worked. I can try. That I could take this tiny little bit, this itsy tiny little bit of point here. Cut it off, but it doesn't. That kind of works. I'm just pushing it down and that here. For a few moments there, you had to imagine me coming up with interesting things to say, because I was failing to come up with anything interesting to say. I really hope this works and that it doesn't look all terrible when it's done, because I'm spending a lot of time in your time if you're watching this or listening to it. These tiny little pieces of tape on it to make it look like it's not just a single piece of plexiglass, but that it's pieces of plexiglass with a metal frame, which is how it should look. That's what it's supposed to be, is, yeah, pieces of plexiglass with a metal frame. I don't know if it's my imagination or if it's real, but this one seems to be going a little faster than the other side. As I said that, you know, that's usually a curse. It's usually one of those, oh, it seems to be going okay. That's when something goes wrong. That has happened multiple times. Although sometimes I'd say, oh, that actually went okay. And it really did go okay. That's kind of that's always a surprise, really. But there have been times when I've been surprised like that. Like when on the Apollo, putting together the escape tower. And there's these little doors at the top for rocket nozzles. And I tried to test fit those over and over and over again. And wow, it's really not even close. They just didn't work. Okay, I couldn't get them to fit no matter what I did. So I thought, well, I got to get on with it. And I got the contact cement out and cemented them. And they went right on, like right where they were supposed to be, exactly the way they were supposed to be. It was a surprise. It was, what, can't focus here. It was one of those what just happened moments. Looked okay, and then it didn't look okay. No, that didn't go well. That's just not right. Just having a hard time. This is like as I was saying, it was going well, right? That was kind of a curse. And it turned out to be that this should have been one of the easiest little pieces to put on, and it just didn't work. Couldn't get it right. So I'm not going to say things are going okay anymore, because then it'll jinx it. Maybe not curse it. I'm not sure it's cursed. Cursing isn't. We don't do cursing on this. This is um, not even just a PG. It's a PG-13. Not even a PG-13. It's a PG stream. And let your 3 or 4-year-olds watch this or listen to it, because it's just that kind of thing. And actually, you could, why not let your little kids listen to relaxing painting with dice and dungeons, because it'd be like white noise in the background. I'm not kidding. I mean, that's what it would be like. I guess that's okay now. Starting to lose focus. And I mean that literally, and I'm using the word literally in the correct fashion, is that my eyes aren't focusing like they should. What's up with that? I might have to take a little bit of a break after I get this panel done, just to stretch a little bit and attempt to refocus. Again, in the literal sense, getting my eyes to like see what I'm trying to see. That happened again. I keep getting, that one's okay. This tiny little point trying to get in the corner. And sometimes the tiny little point, this goes a little too far. I need to get clear that off. After I get this piece on, I need to detape my fingers. It was like, again, another one of those tenth of a millimeter kinds of things where it was just short of where it needed to be, leaving a tiny little gap. This one here. To get this is just there for Earl Scheib. No, you don't. Nobody knows what I'm talking about, do you? Back in the day, there used to be a fair amount of repainting of cars. It was just a thing you did because they got like rusty and things like that. Back in the day, that would happen. And there were places that would paint your car, repaint your car, not painted. They would repaint it because it was already painted. Actually, I remember the ads for $50, which is like $600 now, which isn't a lot of money to paint a car, but you would just drive it in, and they'd have a whole crew of paper with a whole lot of masking tape, not little stuff like this, but bigger pieces and pieces of brown paper and stuff, and they would cover up your chrome and your windshield and things they didn't want painted. It would take them. They could tape an entire car in less time than it's taking me to tape this canopy. We'll just put it that way. Okay, they'd do that, and then they spray paint the whole thing, and put a heat lamp on it, I guess, to make it give the impression that it was like factory heat treated paint. And then your car would be a different color, and it would last probably a year or so, and maybe it would flake off, maybe it would rust underneath and push off. But yeah, I mean, that was a whole thing. It was place you could go in and in a day make your car a different color. It's pretty amazing. I don't know if there's anything like that anymore. To be careful not to oversaturate this, but to give it a really light coat. I think I need to prime it first, for adhesion. Is the light coat of white primer, and then the metallic paint, and then not oversaturate it, but just go psh, and then maybe come back and go psh, the other way. You have to make that noise when you're painting. Yeah, the coffee. Oh, it's over there. So yeah, there was Earl Scheib. You do that. Change the color of your car. And I don't know if their taping was any better than mine, around the chrome. There's overspray on the chrome and the windshield, but around the edges. But it's just, if you weren't under bright daylight looking at it through a magnifier, it probably looked just fine. If Earl Scheib would do a canopy. We could just do a field trip to Earl Scheib, and I don't know if that's even product placement, or I don't know if they exist anymore, to be honest. So if they do, I'm sorry I'm using your brand name without your permission, but if you don't, well, then it doesn't matter. But they had franchises, it was a franchised kind of thing, because they were just everywhere. I don't mean like everywhere in the sense that if you walk down the street, you'd see a couple of Earl Scheibs or something. It wasn't really like that. I think every, medium to large size city would have at least one of them. Probably going to regret my decision to tape the inside of it. I'll explain why I'm going to be doing it, because it will make sense in terms of the appearance and aesthetics of the model, but probably not make sense in terms of the amount of time that's going to be spent making it happen. But since I have to maintain this monologue. I'm going to not talk about it now because it gives me something to talk about a little bit later when I won't have anything else to talk about. So the whole reason I'm taping this to begin with, because these canopies were not like one solid piece of plexiglass, but they were multiple frames of plexiglass held in a metal frame. And and that should be apparent on the model then. The metal frame should not look like plexiglass. The metal frame should look metallic, which means that it should be painted the same, aluminum. Should be aluminum color, like the body of the plane. So in order to get the frame, painted aluminum and not have the rest of it painted aluminum, but only the metal frame represented with aluminum paint, I'm taping over the part that's supposed to stay clear and then spray painting the rest of it aluminum. Now, that's what's happening here is I'm very carefully, if not entirely successfully, but very carefully, taping the edges here of where the frame is. Curve here, and then I'll do the sides. You see, I got the front part that I thought would be the hard part, and it wasn't easy, but it wasn't terrible. No, yeah. So we had these different stations, and the TV remote controls didn't exist until much later when they had electronic tuning. The TVs that I started growing up with, everything was mechanical. Okay, so in order to change the channels, you had to go up to the TV and turn a dial. If you wanted the sound changed, you had to go up to the TV and turn a little knob. If you wanted the picture to not be flipping because the vertical hold wasn't holding, then you don't know what that is even like anymore, but how annoying it was to have your picture just basically scroll over and over and over again until you could adjust the vertical. Sometimes it couldn't even be done. I mean, you just give it up, and the vertical would not hold, and you couldn't watch it because the picture kept scrolling. Why can't I get this in the corner? It's just not happening. Would be a really simple thing to just get it right there in the corner, but it's not happening. Yet not right. So getting a show on was actually a fair amount of work back in the day. And yeah, it required a lot of manual manipulation of the dials and knobs on the television set. I'm going to do this. Here. Back and try to figure out what to do with the corner later. No, I didn't want that. Guess that'll be okay. Yeah, it's not in the corner at all. I'm going to have to just have to play with that from the other direction. Wow. Yeah, that would have been considered like to be an almost epic fail, really. So we had to adjust the antenna. If you had rabbit ears on the inside on your TV, you need to rotate them and move them around a lot. There was just a lot of moving around. Getting a show to show on your TV was usually a two-person job. I'll try to explain that. One is that like the vertical hold, if your TV was scrolling, okay, and the vertical hold wasn't working, sometimes the vertical hold knob was on the back of the TV. And so whoever was, controlling the vertical knob couldn't see the picture. And so somebody would be moving the knob around way or the other, trying to get it to stop moving. And another person had to watch the picture and just say a little more, a little more. Nope, nope, back. Go back the other way. Nope. Okay, stop there. Nope, go back. And that would take some, minutes, many minutes. It felt like a lot of minutes, especially, if your show was coming on and you hadn't, scheduled the tuning of the TV far enough in advance. And I'm not kidding about that. That really, it was like that. If you want, like if you had a show on at, I'll just say 6:00, right? And you're finishing dinner at no later than 5 minutes to 6, absolutely no later than that. Somebody would go to the TV and you'd have to warm up the TV because they were all tubes, and the tubes needed to get hot so they could emit their little electrons, So you'd go You'd actually just say, hey, kid, because it was always the kid who got to do these things. Because, the mom was there probably washing dishes and the dad was probably paying bills or something. So, hey, kid, warm up the TV. And that was a thing you would do. It was a thing you had to do, is warm up the TV, which is meant to turn it on and wait. And you could look inside the television because there are always openings because it had to be air cooled. Air had to move through it because the tubes put out a lot of heat. You'd warm up the TV. That was part of the ritual. It was just simply turning it on and waiting. But then you dial it to the channel that you're going to be watching. Okay. After it was warm enough so that you actually had a picture, because he didn't at first, which it would come on kind of gradually. But once you had a picture, then you could manipulate the antenna so that the picture was sort of in focus. And then if you were really unlucky, it would be scrolling, and you'd have to get a helper to come in to watch the picture while you adjusted the vertical hold. And seriously, it was a serious thing. If you didn't give enough time, or if the conditions weren't right, for good reception. I've got the antenna exactly where it was when we were watching channel 12 last time. Well, it's not coming through now. You're going to have to adjust it. But it's exactly where it was last time. Yeah, well, that might be, but it's not working now. You'd have to warm up the TV by letting it get started. Get that going. And then you'd need to adjust the antenna. If you had an outside antenna, hopefully it would be oriented right. If you were, really fancy, you'd have a rotary channel antenna. I'll talk about that in a bit. That was really a fancy thing. And then you get the vertical hold right. I should say, by the way, that these were all black and white. There was color TV, but it was a truly exotic thing at that time. At least in my life, it was really exotic. And there were only maybe 3 shows in the entire week on any of the channels. I mean, like, even if you counted all 3 channels in the entire week, there might have been like 3 shows that were actually broadcast in color. So it was hardly worth the expense to get one of those if all you could watch was Bonanza and Disney on Sunday, nothing during the week. So I'll just make that clear. Yeah, there were other controls too, like there was a brightness control that determined just, how bright the picture was. And you would want to adjust that, because during the day you'd want it really quite bright, because you'd usually have natural light coming into the house. And at night, when it was dark out and all you had were a couple of incandescent lamps in the corners, you'd want the brightness dimmed down, because otherwise it'd be too glaring. So yeah, I mean, it was a significant effort to get a television show to be ready to go. TV, getting the antenna right, setting the vertical hold, and it was a lot of work. I'm going to use an even narrower tape here because this is a curve, not a straight line. And the wider the tape, the less it will bend without getting nasty creases in it. You'd go through all that effort, and then what would you get? You'd get like Wyatt Earp, Jim Bowie, some Western. There's almost always that's what they were Westerns. Wow, that's way too long anyway. Televisions became more and more sophisticated. Eventually, didn't have to worry about vertical hold as much. I'm trying to think of the significant uh, technological leaps in television viewing back in the 1950s. One of them was the color of your black and white. Okay, you'd think, well, what do you mean by the color of your black and white, and what difference did that make? Well, the cathode ray tubes, the picture tube would produce kind of a bluish grayish color, and somehow somebody figured out how to change the phosphors on the screen so that it was kind of a brownish tone. They called it sepia. So it wasn't quite as glaring. I mean, it really was easier to watch. The sepia toned screen. We ended up getting one of those, and it really was an improvement. Just kind of like the difference between an old fluorescent light where you get kind of this bluish color, or the early LEDs, the daylight ones that were too much blue in it, that were really kind of harsh and ugly because we're used to the incandescents, which have more red in them. Or the difference between an incandescent and fluorescent, if you remember that. It was kind of like that. So getting the sepia tone on your black and white that was a good thing. Other innovations, another big innovation was interlaced. What that meant was that they didn't have like LCD or LED pixels like we do now. The picture tube scanned across. The picture came from a beam. It was a beam that scanned across the front of the picture tube. And so your picture was actually a series of lines. There were just lines across the TV. And, it could only scroll so fast. And so you'd get, there were issues with, especially when sports started being televised, there were just really issues in terms of the scanning couldn't really keep up with the motion, and also the resolution, how clear the picture wasn't always very good. So what they're able to do was like have two sets of lines instead of just one. So like half of the picture would be scanned across your picture tube, and then the other half would be scanned across. They were alternating, and that actually did improve the representation of motion, but also the clarity of the picture. So that was a big deal. And then I promised to talk about antennas. So if you were really fancy, you would get, you'd get a rooftop antenna, which was a lot better than just the rabbit ears on the set, because it was outside and the signals didn't have to come through the walls of your house, right? I mean, think about that, right? So I need to cover this whole thing. So I'm going to use these bigger pieces of tape. Yeah, so you put one on the roof, and it would have all sorts of like rods on it of different lengths and different orientations to pick up different channels. They were kind of, trying to be universal. So, yeah, so you would do that. But then, like I said, if you got really fancy, you would have a rotating motor on it, which would allow you to, it wasn't really remote controlled. You'd have to run a wire all the way from the antenna on your roof down along the side of the house into the house. Okay. You have to run a wire to do this. But then you'd have this little actually it was big. It was a dial on the top of your TV, or the place where your TV was set. And when you rotated the dial, it would rotate the antenna so that you could get it to point directly at the station that you wanted. And that would improve your reception, because you could aim it in the direction of the station. And so there was, when you got one of these, there was the whole setup process. And what the setup process is that, okay, you put on channel 4, pick a channel, you'd put on channel 4, and again, it was like a 2-person job. Someone would be watching the screen, and the other person would be rotating the dial, which would be rotating the antenna. Okay. And this will probably a piece, but this is what I've got out. And you'd rotate it until the picture was as clear as you could get. And you'd say, stop right there. Right? And you did. And then you'd put a little numbered sticky tab. Okay, you put a little numbered sticky tab there because there was an arrow. There was an arrow on the dial that you were rotating that would point in the direction, supposedly point in the direction that the antenna was pointing. And you'd put the little number 4 there, which meant that if you wanted to watch channel 4 in the future, you would know how to rotate the antenna. So that was pointing at channel 4. And then you do that for all your channels. At that time, there were at least 5. We ended up, because you had 3, 4, 6, and 12, and then the UHF channel of 18. And then another UHF channel came in, channel 36, all the way up to 36, really. So what, there were 6 channels, and you had to mark exact, play around rotating the antenna until you found the direction that worked for all of them. That was kind of a fun thing to do. The parents made the kids do that because that was fun for us. For them, it would have just been a tedious waste of time. And that usually worked. Like, turn on channel 4 and you'd rotate it to the 4. But sometimes it didn't. Sometimes you just go, I don't know why. It used to work. It doesn't. And you'd play around with the dial and move the antenna around, and nothing would work. And it turned out that there was like something going on in the atmosphere that got in the way. But yeah, it was all part of that. That was a huge, high class innovation in television. Okay, so you go, that looks like it's done, but it's not, because I'm going to do the inside. And you go, why would you do the inside? Well, the thing is, this is clear plastic, and you can see through it. I'm just, well, okay, so those were words. I'm using up word time. And when you look through it, you can see that the inside, and in the real canopy, the inside is also metal. It's not just the metal frame on the outside, it's a metal frame all around it. That corner is not good. It's just not good at all. And so on the model here, when you look through the canopy and look at the inside, it will just look like, oh, you got clear plastic on the inside. It doesn't look like it's a metal frame at all. But if I tape the inside, like I just did the outside, then I can paint the inside and make it look like the canopy is metal. The canopy frame is on the inside as well as the outside. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it, I'm going to moderate that just a little bit. I'm not going to do this panel here. I'm just going to do the outside frame, because I tested that, and when you look in, you can't see this. Can't see that. Okay. You can see this in the edges. So it's just this here and then one bit there. use the match it to the tape that's on there. And this isn't going to be any particularly much easier. In fact, it's a little harder because it's concave instead of convex. So this is going to be slow and tedious, just like it was on the outside. I maybe, I can probably say, well, I don't need to be quite as careful because the only way you can see it is by looking through the canopy. But I'm going to try to do my best here and make it look good. Good enough anyway. I say is I am able to, I'm finding that I'm unable to actually reach the spot where I want to put the tape. So I don't have a ridge to use to line it up. So I'm going to line it up using the outside tape as my guide. What I'm trying to do is have this tape match up with the outside tape. If anything, I want to slightly inside of it so that I don't have like aluminum paint on the inside showing through the outside. That's what I'm attempting to do here. But yeah, television tuning used to be a thing. I especially remember warming up the TV because that was a thing that had to happen. It was fun as kids to watch it warm up. And seriously, that's what you do. You could, like I said, those tubes generated a lot of heat. And so there are vents in the back of all the televisions, high class, cheap, inexpensive, expensive, whatever, because the air had to move through it. Because if your tubes got too hot, they would burn out. And that was another ritual of replacing tubes all the time. That was actually an advent. Replacing tubes led to an advent of a do-it-yourself kind of thing. Explain that. There used to be a profession. Television repair was a profession, and they would come to your house. You could take your TV in to the repair place. Like if you had a little portable TV, it's 10 or 10 inch, with a handle, that kind of thing. You could do that. But a lot of televisions then were actually pieces of furniture. Be a whole console thing. They were large and heavy. And it wasn't the kind of thing that you could very easily just take in. And so it was part of the profession to make house calls, just like physicians, doctors used to make house calls, because that was at a time, right up until even the 60s, some doctors would make house calls because it wasn't unusual for them to be the only ones that had a car. They could afford a car, but a lot of people in working class neighborhoods, like where I grew up, they wouldn't have a car. They couldn't, when you were sick, right? You couldn't get to the doctor. The doctor came to you. That's kind of a weird thought, isn't it? Now that happens with EMTs, emergency medical technicians, but back then it was just the doc. Certainly hurt their productivity, which would be an issue nowadays, wouldn't it? But then it was the way it happened. Well, your television doctor would do the same thing. Would make a house call, and usually what it wasn't always that, but usually what it was is that they would just find that one of the tubes had burned out, and they literally using the word correctly. They would burn out because the emitter, which was really hot, just stopped emitting. So they would have a portable tube tester that they could use, and they'd carry a whole bunch of tubes with them and pull one out and put a new one in, and there you went. It used to be a joke. It was kind of actually a running joke. But it wasn't a joke because it actually happened. You'd make a call, you'd dial on your phone to the TV doctor who would, prepare to make a house call. But before they came out, they'd say, it's going to be like $5 for me to come out. You're going to have to pay that whether I do anything or not. So what I want you to do is check to see if it's plugged in. And like I said, that was kind of a running joke, but it also wasn't a joke because sometimes all that was the problem, is that someone had like been vacuuming or things like that, right? And pulled the cord out of the wall where the kids were playing in the living room, right? And chipped over the cord because there weren't a lot of outlets, and if your TV wasn't exactly where the outlet was, so there would actually be these helpful hint kinds of things. And if your TV isn't working, first of all, check to make sure it's plugged in. Second, make sure that it's turned on. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it that was a thing. You wanted to be sure that it was plugged in and turned on. I didn't get the corner right, and that corner is going to be impossible to see, but I can tell it's not done right here, so I'm going to try to do something about it. Yeah, that'll do. It's not a smooth curve. I noticed that it's kind of angled. I thought it was like a curve, but it's flat curved. I was wondering why the tape didn't quite fit right. So the TV repair person would come and check your tubes. Usually you could kind of tell which one wasn't working because a tube that was working would glow orange. I mean, you could see the emitter. That was one of the things about watching the TV warm up. is that you would look on the inside of the TV, and you'd see the tubes starting to glow. They'd glow that orange, kind of a deep orange color. And you could see, if the vents were big enough, you could see most of the tubes, and you'd just be sitting there going, "Oh, I hope they all light up." Because if one of them wasn't working, then you wouldn't get it to get your show, because it wouldn't be on because your TV wasn't working. Can't reach where I'm going here. We're going to go in this direction. There were other things. There were lots of things in a TV that could break. There were boards that were full of capacitors and resistors. And if it wasn't simply a tube burned out, then they would have to test the flow of electricity through the inside of your TV. Including all those little bitty components. It was quite a to-do. And if it turned out that it was like a capacitor or a resistor, they were soldered onto these little brown boards, bead boards that were kind of a plastic wood combination thing. I'm not sure what they were made out of, but they were filled with little holes. And their capacitors and resistors all had little wires on the ends, and they'd poke through the holes, and you'd solder them on the back. You wouldn't do it. The repair person would do it. Sometimes they could do that in your house. Sometimes you got bad news of, I'm going to have to take this into the shop. And you would help them carry your TV out to their vehicle and say goodbye and hope you'd see it again. But again, the most common issue was simply, and it was simple, that a tube had burned out. And that gave rise to the self-repair thing. In that usually drugstores had these, but some other retail establishments also had them, were tube testing stations. So if you suspected that what you had was a burned out tube, okay, if that's what you suspected, you could open up your TV, make sure you unplugged it, okay, and to make sure that you unplugged your TV before you opened it up, because these TVs had capacitors in them, okay, and capacitors store electric energy and then discharge it all at once, just a sudden zap. And that's what that could happen to you if you didn't unplug it and let it, not just unplug it, but you had to let it set for like 20 minutes or something so that the capacitor is discharged, because if you touched one of the charged capacitors, you could get a nasty jolt. I don't know if fatal or not, but it could be really bad. But you could then open up your TV by unscrewing parts of the case somehow, and take out the tubes. You just pull them out, trying not to bend the pins, because if you bent the pins, then you wouldn't be able to get them back in. You'd pull out your tubes and you maybe take, like, you get a bag, you'd have almost a bag full of tubes, right? And you take those to the drugstore where they had a tube tester, and it was an array that had a receptacle for practically every kind of tube you could have in your TV, which was actually pretty complicated. You could have maybe a dozen different kinds, and you have to find the ones where the pins on your tube lined up with the socket on the tester. Then you'd push the test button and it would tell you whether the tube was still good or not. And then there was usually just above the tube tester a big rack, huge rack of shelves filled with all sorts of tubes with different numbers and serial numbers and this, that, and the other thing, right? Different types. And if you found a tube or two that was bad, usually they would have one there that you could just buy, and then you'd buy it and go home and then put all the tubes back in, including the one you just bought, because that was, the good tube now. And if you were lucky, and I think it was a matter of luck and not skill at that point, if you were lucky, you would have found a replacement for the tube that had been burned out that was keeping your TV from working. So that was an innovation that probably cost TV repair people quite a lot of revenue that they could make by just coming out to your house and simply replacing tubes. For the TV owner, it was a pretty good deal, because even though it was a pain to carry maybe 6 or 8 tubes to a tube tester place, it saved the expense of a house call by the TV repair person. This is getting closer to being done than when I started. I got the outside pretty well masked. I've got the small part of the inside mask. I need to do the rest of this. What time is it? Noon? Wow. Seriously, I've taken 2 hours. This has taken 2 hours. Okay, well, what else have I got in my life, right? What else have you got in yours? So I'm going to be streaming next week, and you're going to say, well, what will it be? Because all I've got to do is spray paint this without creating a disaster, taking the tape off, and attaching it to the model. Well, what I'm going to be doing next, and I can't really show it to you now because I have to keep working at this. I'll never finish if I don't keep at it. Because eventually I'm going to finish taping this, and hopefully there'll actually be some time before 1 o'clock when I can show you what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of streams. Be a little bit of a sort of silly nostalgia trip. No, I screwed up. I did exactly the opposite of what I needed to be doing here. I mean, seriously, it's when I paint the inside, I don't want the metal to show through. And so I taped it just slightly inside of the tape, but I needed to have taped it slightly outside of the tape so that the inside was slightly, there was less coverage than the outside. You know, I just need to do this over. I seriously got it like backward, just absolutely wrong. I don't know what I was just, I was not, I'll explain more what I'm doing and why. Okay, I pretty much just got the whole thing backward. So I have to do the inside. All the stuff I did on the inside has to be redone. So what happened here, and I just realized it when I started doing this bit back here, is, okay, so the outside, that's fine. Okay, it's pretty okay. But on the inside, if I spray paint the metal on the inside, okay, what I don't want to do is I don't want to have the metallic showing through the clear. I don't want the metallic to show through the clear. So I need to put the tape on so it covers more, not less. That is to say, it needs to be outside of this edge so that the inside edge is actually thinner, because I don't want it to show through from the inside. And I'd done just the opposite. I was doing it so that there was more metal on the inside than on the outside. And that it would have ended up looking bad. I probably wasted, what, a half hour at least. Sorry, I apologize for that. It was just, I just got it wrong. I need to extend this tape past the tape on the outside. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm glad I caught that before it was too late. I'm not glad that I ended up, taking time. Had to be redone. So that, yeah, I mean, right here, just making a big faux pas. Hmm. Yeah, so I want to be able to see the tape, see the edge of the tape. When I look through it, I want to be able, like I can here, just see the edge of the tape, edging just past the tape on the outside. Okay, I need to relax a little bit. I started to get impatient, and when that happens, things can get messed up. So slow down again. Okay, that's okay. I'm just looking at this and saying, well, that tape is no, but this is all going to be painted, so you won't see that there's a gap there. Wow. Okay. Well, that was just almost just barely in time. Caught that problem. Well, yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, you could go to the usually the drugstore. I don't know why it was always the drugstore, but it was, we called it the drugstore, but it was, they were pretty fancy things. Usually they had like a little lunch counter. They didn't have tables. There was a counter, like a bar. And then you'd sit at stools, like on a bar stool, and you'd get sandwiches. You'd get sandwiches and pie. Sometimes they'd have a deep fryer, and you could get fries. And then they not only sell, there was a pharmacist there. You get prescriptions filled, but you know, there are also other lots of things for sale at the drugstore. They're kind of interesting places. I mean, it's kind of like the ones we have now, like the CVS's and stuff, but those don't have lunch counters. Called them lunch count. I think they were called lunch counters because that's all they served. I guess if you get breakfast there, they probably had like eggs and toast and pancakes and stuff in the morning. I don't know. I never went in the morning, so I don't know. Couldn't go to the drugstore in the morning because go to school, right? School, not to the drugstore. Dude, this has to extend actually quite a lot beyond tape because it has to cover this little bit here. So what about TV? So yeah, I mean there was warming up the TV. There was the vertical hold. There was the making sure it was plugged in before you had the repair person come all the way out. Because I mean that actually would happen. The newspapers would have those, you know, before you call the repair person, check these things first. Is it plugged in? Is it turned on? You know, the kinds of things that you would think, well, of course, you know, but sometimes it's not. You check those things, and sometimes it was, you know, sometimes you'd get bad news, like take this in. I'm going to have to take this in. That was never a good thing. When somebody had to take it in, that meant it was more than just a tube or that it wasn't plugged in. Yeah, so thing, the worst thing that could happen, and these are things that did happen, is that it was, I'm sorry, it's your picture tube. Okay. And the picture tube was a tube. It was a vacuum tube, just like the other tubes, except it was really big and really expensive. And it was kind of like, do I need to buy a new TV? Which was a huge capital expense, or more than you would think. In terms of, you know, a fraction of somebody's weekly annual income. Television sets were not cheap. So yeah, it's like your picture tube, and you could actually replace it in this gigantic tube. You could get a new one, and you definitely could not do that at home. You couldn't do that yourself. And replacing the picture tube was major surgery. Okay, well, I'm back to where I was 20 minutes, 25 minutes ago. To clean this up. So I'm not going to be able to do some of the things I was hoping to do, which is to show you what I was going to do next. So I'm going to start talking about what I'm going to do next because I might not have the opportunity to show you. I mean, for all I know, this will take up all the way until 1 o'clock. At the rate I'm going, anyway. So the next serious model that I'm going to build is a model, a 1/24th scale. It's actually a vintage model. It's another one of those old kits of a Ford Shelby GT 350. It's Carroll Shelby used to do aftermarket souped up a car in the aftermarket. So get a Mustang, a 1965 Mustang, which was the first full year that they came out. And they would tune the engine so that it was more powerful, do some stuff to the suspension, make the interior look cool, give it a great paint job with like a racing stripe on it, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm going to do the GT350. But I'm not going to start that until after the holidays, because when I opened the box, I was kind of shocked at the large number of parts, detailed interior parts and suspension and engine stuff in the model. I mean, just really, it's going to be a more intense model than I had thought it would be initially. And I don't want to start that until after the holidays. So what I'm going to do starting on Monday, actually, I thought I would get this done in like about an hour instead of 3. I really did. I really thought that I'd get this done in about an hour and I'd have all sorts of time left. So I was anticipating, silly me, I was thinking that I would have time actually to do the assembly of this next model that I'm going to build just before the holidays, which obviously did not turn out because this is taking the entire 3 hours to do this taping. It probably didn't help. I know it didn't help that I had to redo the interior here. It was not a thing that moved this along more quickly. So there was this guy named Ed Big Daddy. His name wasn't Big Daddy. His name was Ed Roth. But they called him Big Daddy. And in the 1950s and 60s, he built hot rods, which meant he would take cars and then modify them so that they had like exhaust stacks on the outside and chromed air cleaners and big tires on the back and that kind of thing. Okay. Usually they would take the hood off so that the engine was actually totally exposed. Well, he customized cars that way. But he was also known, he created this figure called Rat Fink, which was just a picture of a rat with big sharp teeth and beady eyes and sort of things. And for some reason, when I was a later teen, like 13, something like that, I really got into the Rat Finks. And he came out with like many, many different models. There was not just the Rat Fink, but there was Rat Fink on a motorbike and Rat Fink surfing and a Fink on the moon and a bunch of other stuff like that. Well, I built like all of those kits, all of them, when I was like 13 or 14 years old. And they reissued a lot of them in the 1990s and early 2000s. And when I was buying models, because I thought I would have way too much time after I retired to, stay sane, I bought virtually all of them, all of the reissues. So this thing will take, just a little bit of time to cement together. I was really planning on doing that today. I thought I would have time after I did this to actually cement together the rat fink, and then on Monday I was going to do, what I usually do, which is to fill in and sand down the seams. But I mean, pretty obviously, I'm not doing that today because it's taken the entire stream to do the taping on this. Did I get that right? It just doesn't look good. So next week, I'm going to make the rat fink and then do the car after that. Like I said, what I was kind of hoping is that this would have taken half the time it's taking, and that I would have been able to actually have unboxed and cemented together the fink. But that didn't happen because this took all the time. This took all the time in the world. So I think. Hi, Enforcer. Oh well, thanks for dropping in anyway. I almost have this. I almost have this done. So on Monday, I'll be putting the canopy onto the plane and finishing it, and then moving on to the rat fink, because that's what's next. But thanks for dropping in. I hope you have a good weekend. See you then. Really hoping is that after all of this, when I spray paint it, it doesn't just turn into a spray paint disaster and leak all over the inside of the canopy. That would be bad. That when I take the tape off, I just have really nice, clean paint lines all over the place where I want them, and not where I don't. Okay, and then finally, I need to remember to tape out the rest of this, because if I spray it on the inside without taping that, then the whole thing will be covered in metallic paint. That would be bad. There's so many opportunities for things to go bad here. It's really pretty impressive, the opportunities for things to go badly. I have a few minutes left, actually, when I'm done here, to show you the think model. So what is going to happen with this is that over the weekend, I'm going to paint it. So, I'll go over the tape, the edges of the tape, with my fingers to make sure that it's nicely pressed down and that the edges are sealed. That things like I just did there, there's a gap are filled. So I'll do a thorough inspection of the taping. And then paint it. I think I'm almost tempted not to prime it. What I'm thinking, the reason I'm thinking that is that if the metallic paint kind of adheres, but not really well, if it leaks out, then I can scrape it off a little bit. I can do a little scraping off without harming the plastic. And if I just spray the metallic on without priming it, then it's one more event. It's one less time that paint is getting sprayed on it and potentially leaking through. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to paint it without priming it. Well, there. I think I've got covered. I think I've got covered everything that needs to be covered. But like I said, I'm going to just thoroughly inspect it before painting it, just to make triply sure. I just really don't want to have gone through 2.5 hours of putting tape on something just to have it messed up because I didn't check it one last time. There. Take these off. Charge them up over the weekend. Tape away. Well, there. Got to go down rerun of something I talked about once before, which was old TVs and living with old TVs, or in actuality, failing to live with old TVs. Got that pretty well taped up, I think. And then I'm just going to clean it a little bit. So just let it sit out here so you can see what I managed to do in 2.5 hours. Okay, here. That's a rat fake. And see, as I said, Ed Big Daddy Roth, rat fink. He was, he did these kinds of things. He did these kind of custom cars. I mean, these are just bizarre kind of models of them, but that's the kind of thing he would do to a car. Is he would take the hood off and put big velocity stacks on the engine and throw extra chrome around it, put big wheels on the back, cheater slicks for like drag racing. Okay. This is a full 6-inch figure of Ed Roth's famous, see, it says famous rat fink. And there's hardly any parts. You just paint, tape, let me open the box. It can show you what's going on here. Look, I got a patch. It comes with a patch. It's pretty amazing. Look at that. Wow. And a set of instructions. Goes great with, before you begin, study the assembly drawings. Those must be on the inside. There. This is it. There's there's 2 body halves, a tail, and feet, a nose, and beady eyeballs. I'm not going to use the beady eyeballs. I don't like it. It's red. Boy, yeah. So this, you can see that this would go together really quickly. So I can cement this together. Dang, I really should just do this today. I should cement it together so that on Monday I can fill in and sand down the seams, and then it just gets painted like a minifig. I wish I had a little more time. Okay, but if I don't do this now, it's not going to get done. I'm just going to go late today. I don't have anything else really to do today, other than, I don't think I really do, except until later tonight. Okay. This is going to take like another half hour, but I'm just going to go ahead and get it done, because if I do, then I can move forward with it. I'm going to cut out the parts, cement them together, and then the cement will be set, and then on Monday I can clean them up. Why not? I mean, you can see it's pretty bizarre, right? I mean, it's a pretty bizarre critter. My mom hated these. I keep saying, I've said that over and over again, and it's true. She just absolutely hated these and couldn't figure out why I built them. And as soon as I went off, well, as soon as she had a chance, she just threw them away. So my beautiful collection of original Radfink models disappeared into the garbage. It's in some landfill somewhere. So I did check to see if any of these had value. Okay, because sometimes these old models, 15 years after I buy them, are more valuable than I paid for them. Like the X15 turns out to be worth $120, and the Aurora model the sci-fi model of the thing that the existence of which everyone denies. Okay, that was worth like 90. This gained no value at all. There are some of these. There are a couple of reissues that are actually kind of that have value. One of them is one of my favorites. It's the Super Fink, which is a kind of doofy looking buck-toothed rat fink on a skateboard with a cape. And that one's worth like $60. And the other one that's worth money was Fink Eliminator, which is a monster with a hammer that's destroying a car, which is actually the first model I built on this stream. If you go way back to the very beginning, it might still be on YouTube. The first model I ever built on this stream, that one is the other one that's worth some money. That's kind of ironic, right? That the one that has some monetary value is the one that I built before I thought about whether these things had any monetary value or not. I'm destroying my cardboard here. Okay, slow down. Don't get too anxious. I know you're going late. It's okay. This one doesn't. This isn't worth anything. So yeah, I'm going to go probably like 10 or 15 minutes. It isn't going to take too long to cement this together, I don't think. There aren't very many parts. 2 body halves, the feet, and the tail. And then on Monday, I can go back to what I do a lot, which is sanding, filing and sanding. There it is. That's a nice long tail. And then this will just be painted like a minifig. So on Monday, I'll be unmasking the canopy and either cheering or crying. And that you won't know until then. So join in on Monday, find out how that went. I'll be attaching the canopy to the plane, and then it'll be done, and I'll just show it off as a finished model. And then I will be sanding and filing Ratfink. Imagine, I'm expecting these parts not to fit terribly well. Really? Okay, well, that's disappointing. I need to, the screw parts are interfering with the fitting together of the parts. I'm probably just going to not only be doing sanding and filing, I'm probably going to end up doing some filling in as well. These parts don't fit very well together. There'll be gaps that need to be filled in. I had one of these needle files had a nice, flat on one side and curved on the other. And I don't know where that one went, but sometimes it would just be, it would have been the thing I needed. Oh yeah, televisions used to be a lot more user interface friendly, unfriendly. I mean, there used to be a lot you had to do to get a television to work. That now you don't think about it anymore. They're not even televisions anymore, really, because nothing is really. You can. There are still televised stations, broadcast stations, but people hardly ever watch those with just an antenna picking up the signal. So you can't even really call them that anymore. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I guess they still call them TVs. Kind of an archaic thing. But they're not. Yeah. I mean, if I still went on even further today, talking about stuff, I would talk about, pixelated viewing and radiation dangers from the cathode ray tubes, sitting too close to the television and all that sort of stuff. But what I really want to do is just put a whole bunch of cement on this. And, put it together so that I can work on it on Monday. So this is pretty straightforward. Those two parts just go together like that. And the gaps are pretty significant, so I'll probably be doing a lot of filling in. This is not like a super high class yeah, well, there. And then the tail, the guess goes here. I don't have to put the tail on, but you need to put the feet on. Okay, I'm going to cement these together, and that'll be that. And then I'll deal with the feet after that. And getting excess cement on this, it will help to fill in the gaps. Well, that taping, like I said, the masking of the canopy ended up, like a lot of things on this stream, more than twice as long as I expected. I had thought that I would have done this a long time ago, like an hour or so ago instead of now. using some rubber bands on this, maybe. And not to get too much on my fingers. Doesn't even come with those little pins, alignment pins. There's none of that going on here at all. Okay, well, I got a supply of rubber bands. I had them upstairs and found some, so I can actually rubber band this. No, that one broke. I guess they're not fresh, are they? Trying to get the parts kind of lined up, so that they're kind of lined up. If they're really misaligned, then there's a lot of cleaning up that needs to be done. This is going to require a good deal of. The back is bigger than the front. That's the deal there. So all of that's going to have to be filed and sanded down. So that matters very much there. Yeah, this will be an interesting mess. But I'll get to spend Monday filling and filing, the stuff I usually do with models to make the seams disappear as much as possible. I'm gonna put clips on these. I think alligator clips might work. Those went. put a better way to hold the feet on and to just have it stand up on them. Well, there's a fink, and it's cemented together. And I'm only just a couple of minutes late. My wall clock is running fast. So what I managed to do today was spend 2.5 hours putting tape on this. I mean, that's what I did. And then I spent like 15 minutes cementing together the body halves of this rat fink. And I'm not being real compulsive about the rat fink because, you know, it's going to be like a minifig. It's just going to be painted. So I'll be spending a lot of time on Monday. Pretty much what I'll be doing is sanding and filing the seams away as much as I can. You know, as much as that's going to happen with this thing. And it's going to take a fair amount of it. It just really goes over the edge. And then there's some places that need to be filled in up here. Actually, I'm going to just, since I know those need to be filled in, I'm going to just do that now. Just put filler on it. Because there shouldn't be openings around the top of its head. Or why not do that? It's kind of messy. We'll sand that out. And then, yeah, I'm just going to do this around the feet too. The tail, I'm not sure what to do about the tail. It just doesn't fit at all. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think. Everything's getting really sloppy and messy here. Yep, and you can tell it's the end of the stream, or beyond the end of the stream today, because it's just really sloppy and messy. And you asked, isn't this filler going to interfere with the setting of the cement? And my answer is, I really don't know. It might. Find out on Monday. Yeah, I'll be doing some sanding and filing and stuff on Monday. And then depending on how that goes, there should be actually time left after I'm done with that to do other things. I mean, there really actually should be time left. It shouldn't take that long. But if it does, maybe I'll, pull out some parts of the Lotus, not the Lotus, but the Ford, the GT350, and maybe I'll pull out some parts of that and just start figuring out what will need to be done to make that happen. Okay, well, yeah, I just made a mess here at the end, but, that's not an issue with this particular thing. Mostly it's going to be just painting it. So it'll be almost like painting a minifig, but it will be big because this is large. And see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Well, thanks for watching. I did manage to get the canopy taped, and over the weekend I will get it painted. For better or worse, it will either look really good or not. I'll find out on Monday when I unmask it. And then I'll sand and file the seams on this guy and prime it Monday evening and Tuesday, and then start painting it on Wednesday. And I lost the cap for the how did that happen? There it is. Yay. Okay, well, there. That's a rat fink. The tail goes on the back end. I'm going to stop messing around because I'm getting cold and tired, and I need to end the stream. Yep, the canopy is done taping, so I'll recheck the tape and paint it, and then unmask it on Monday and install it, and then declare the Pogo completed, and I'll be just doing a whole lot of filing down and sanding the seams on the rat fink, getting it ready to be primed, and then I'll plan to paint it then next Wednesday. I'm going to be not streaming over the holidays and into January. Okay. Some of that is going to be not happening. And so I'll fill you in on that next week. I'll let you know when I'll be, when I'm streaming and when I'm not streaming next week. I will tell you when in the future I'll be streaming or not streaming. But I will be back on Monday at more or less 10. Hopefully, finishing up the vertical takeoff and landing plane and starting to work on the rat fink, which will just be kind of a fun little thing to do in a couple of streams that I've got before the holidays. Thanks everybody. Thanks Enforcer for dropping in, and I hope that your weekend goes well, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye.